In the quiet corners of your home, your devices whisper stories of innovation and wonder. Tonight, let's take a gentle journey through the world of technology, a world that hums softly beneath our fingertips, waiting to be discovered. So, settle in, breathe deeply, and let the story unfold like the soft glow of an old computer terminal in a darkened room. Picture, if you will, a time when computers were not the sleek companions we know today, but towering machines that filled entire rooms with their gentle humming and the soft clicking of mechanical switches. Not a tale of destruction or malice, but rather a gentle exploration of curiosity that would accidentally shape the digital world we inhabit today. It's a story of innocent wonder, of brilliant minds asking simple questions that would echo through decades of technological evolution. The year is 1971, and in the peaceful corridors of research laboratories across America, something remarkable is about to happen. This is the story of the first computer virus. Close your eyes and drift with me to a simpler time when the internet was just a dream called ARPANET, when computers spoke to each other in whispered electronic conversations across telephone lines, and when a single programmer's innocent question would change everything. Let us begin our journey in the early 1970s, when the world of computing was still finding its voice, still learning to speak in the language of ones and zeros. Imagine walking through the hallowed halls of research institutions like MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and the University of California at Los Angeles. The air is filled with the gentle whir of cooling fans, the soft clicking of teletype machines, and the occasional beep of a computer acknowledging a command. These are the cathedrals of early computing, where massive machines called PDP-10s stand like gentle giants, their lights blinking in peaceful rhythms that seem almost like breathing. The PDP-10, manufactured by the Digital Equipment Corporation, is a marvel of 1970s engineering. This system, developed by the brilliant minds at Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, represents a quantum leap forward in computer design, using a special piece of hardware called the BBN pager. It allows programs to use far more memory than physically exists in the machine. They welcome visitors freely, allowing programs to move from one machine to another without question or suspicion. The RSEXEC facility, a feature of TNUX, send them across the network to another machine and have them execute there as if they were running locally. The Model 33 teletype, with its mechanical keyboard and paper printout, connects him to the vast PDP-10 in the next room. Every keystroke produces a satisfying click, and every response from the computer appears both on the paper and on his screen, creating a permanent record of their conversation. What if it could travel from one computer to another, not just as data being transferred, but as a living, active piece of code that could execute on each machine it visited? When a program needs data that isn't currently in memory, the system quietly retrieves it from disk storage, creating the illusion of unlimited space. Thomas is not thinking of viruses or malware, terms that don't even exist yet. He is simply wondering about the possibilities of this connected world, about what might be possible when computers can talk to each other as easily as people in the same room. The researchers working on these machines are pioneers, explorers in a new digital frontier. The soft green glow of the phosphorescent screen illuminates his thoughtful face as he contemplates a fascinating question that has been growing in his mind for weeks. They share a common vision of computers, not as isolated calculating machines, but as nodes in a vast network of human knowledge and creativity. It's like having a library where books appear on your desk exactly when you need them, without you ever having to walk to the shelves. Unlike the simpler operating systems of the time, 10x provides each user with their own virtual world within the computer, a private space where they can work without interfering with others. Standing nearly 6 feet tall and weighing over 1,000 pounds, each machine represents the cutting edge of computational power. Their 36-bit architecture allows them to handle complex calculations and large programs with an elegance that smaller computers cannot match. The soft hum of their cooling systems creates a constant, soothing background noise that becomes as familiar to the researchers as their own heartbeats. In these quiet spaces, something revolutionary is taking shape, but something has captured his imagination. The idea that programs themselves could travel across the network, moving from machine to machine like digital nomads exploring this new electronic frontier. A network called ARPANET, the grandfather of our modern internet, is beginning to connect these distant machines like invisible threads of light. Data packets travel between universities, carrying messages and programs across hundreds of miles at the speed of electricity, creating the first truly distributed computing environment in human history. The network is small, intimate even. Only about 28 machines are connected, each running a sophisticated operating system called 10x. TENEX's virtual memory system is particularly elegant. These computers share a beautiful trust and openness that would seem almost naive by today's standards. It is in this atmosphere of scholarly cooperation and technological wonder that our story truly begins. At BBN Technologies, a company whose very name whispers of innovation and whose offices hum with the quiet intensity of brilliant minds at work, a programmer named Bob Thomas sits before his terminal. The terminal before him is a marvel in its own right. Thomas has been working with ARPANET for months now, watching as researchers share files, send messages, and collaborate across vast distances. What if, he wonders, a program could move by itself? The question is innocent, born of pure curiosity rather than any desire to cause harm. And so, in the quiet of his laboratory, surrounded by the gentle hum of computing machinery and the soft glow of terminal screens, he begins to write. The program that Bob Thomas creates is elegantly simple, almost childlike in its approach to the world. Like many of the best innovations in computing, it emerges from a desire to explore rather than to exploit, to understand rather than to control. He calls it Creeper, naming it after the mysterious, masked villain from the Scooby-Doo cartoons who would appear and disappear with the catchphrase, "Jeepers, Creepers." The choice of name reflects the playful spirit of the early computing community, where humor and whimsy were as important as technical brilliance. The program consists of just a few dozen lines of code, written in the assembly language of the PDP-10 on the teletype machine connected to the new computer. It prints a simple message in capital letters: "I am the Creeper. Catch me if you can." Each instruction is carefully crafted, each operation precisely planned to achieve the desired effect with minimal complexity. Creeper's design is beautifully straightforward, a testament to the elegance that comes from truly understanding a problem. It exists as a single entity, moving through the ARPANET like a digital ghost, leaving only the memory of its message behind. System operators, working late into the evening in the soft glow of their terminals would notice the unexpected message appearing on their teletypes. The mechanical printer would suddenly spring to life, its keys striking the paper with sharp, staccato sounds that echoed through the otherwise silent room. For a moment, the steady rhythm of computing is broken by this unexpected visitor. But there is no threat in those words, no malicious intent. Like a digital organism, it sought out new environments where it could survive and reproduce. But unlike biological organisms, it had no need to compete for resources or eliminate rivals. If a benevolent program like Creeper could move freely through the network, what about programs with less innocent intentions? But in those quiet moments, when Creeper's message appeared on terminal screens across the ARPANET, the age of digital wanderers had begun. If code could travel from machine to machine without explicit human intervention, how could system administrators maintain control over their computers? The ARPANET was vast enough, and the number of suitable hosts small enough, that Creeper could wander freely without causing any real disruption. It's more like a gentle knock on the door, a polite announcement that something new and curious has come to visit. Others might have scratched their heads, wondering where this mysterious visitor had come from. A few might have felt a momentary concern, wondering if their system had been compromised. But as they investigated further, they would discover that nothing had been damaged. No files had been altered. No data had been stolen. The program's method is as gentle as it is ingenious. It was, in many ways, the most benevolent virus ever created, if we can even call it a virus at all. Modern computer scientists would classify it more accurately as a worm, a self-replicating program that spreads across networks. But in 1971, such distinctions didn't exist. Using the RSEXEC facility that Tenex provides, Creeper packages itself into a neat bundle of code and data. It then surveys the network, looking for other Tenex machines that it can reach through ARPANET's packet switching infrastructure. Each time it appeared on a new system, it demonstrated something that few had imagined possible. That in this new connected world, programs could have a life of their own. When it finds a suitable target, it copies itself across the network, using the same mechanisms that researchers use to share files and run programs remotely. Like a polite guest who doesn't wish to overstay their welcome, it deletes itself from its previous location. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Thomas's design. Creeper does untn multiply endlessly or consume resources greedily. It simply moves one machine at a time, exploring this small digital universe with the wonder of a child discovering a new playground. Once safely transferred to its new host, Creeper announces its presence in the most polite way possible. The message appears suddenly, interrupting whatever work might be happening on the terminal. After displaying its message, Creeper performs one final, crucial operation. The technical elegance of this approach cannot be overstated. By deleting itself from each previous location, Creeper ensures that it never overwhelms the network or consumes more resources than necessary. Picture the scene in those quiet computer rooms when Creeper first appeared. Some might have smiled at the playful nature of the message. Creeper wasn't destructive. It didn't steal passwords or corrupt files. It didn't crash systems or cause any lasting harm. The program's behavior was almost organic in its simplicity. As Creeper made its gentle journey through the ARPANET, visiting perhaps a dozen machines over the course of several months, it was quietly writing the first chapter in the long story of computer security. The implications were profound, though few recognized them at the time. These questions would not be answered for years to come. To truly appreciate the journey of Creeper, we need to pause and take in the remarkable world it traveled through. The ARPANET of 1971 was built on a foundation of trust that feels almost unimaginable today. A digital landscape where cooperation and openness were not just ideals, but everyday realities. The network itself was a marvel, a testament to the vision of researchers who believed computers could be more than isolated machines. Supported by forward-thinking organizations, ARPANET was designed to create a resilient, distributed environment that could keep working even if parts of it encountered problems. These refrigerator-sized devices acted as the nervous system of the early internet, making quick decisions about how to send messages across a growing web of connections. At the heart of this network were special-purpose computers called interface message processors, or MPs, created to manage the flow of data between distant machines. Instead of setting up a single, dedicated path for each conversation, the network broke messages into small packets, each with its own address. These packets could travel independently, taking different routes to their destination and being reassembled upon arrival. If one IMP stopped working, the rest of the network continued on. It was a design that valued reliability and teamwork. Machines like the PDP-10, with their advanced capabilities, were perfect for research and large-scale computation. The secret was virtual memory, made possible by custom hardware, but it was the 10X operating system that truly set them apart. This process was invisible to users and programs, creating the illusion of unlimited resources. A rich set of system features allowed programs to handle files, communicate over the network, and manage tasks with ease. That's what 10X's virtual memory system did for computer programs, letting each one act as if it had access to far more memory than was physically present. The brilliance of ARPANET's design was in its packet switching approach. This made the network incredibly resilient. If one path was unavailable, packets could find another way. This was not a security oversight, but a deliberate choice to encourage collaboration and exploration. User accounts were often shared among colleagues, and security measures were simple and straightforward. The network protocols themselves were open, designed for ease of use and experimentation. The computers connected to this network were impressive in their own right. They worked in an environment of trust where sharing and openness were essential. The idea of using these tools for harm was so far from their minds that it rarely came up. The ability to run programs remotely, access files on distant machines, and collaborate in real time required a level of trust that would be hard to maintain with strict security. It used the network as intended, moving from machine to machine through legitimate channels, running with the full cooperation of the system. In many ways, it was the first true citizen of cyberspace. 10X was a revolution, making each user feel as if they had their own personal computer, even when many people were sharing the same machine. Imagine a library where every book you need appears on your desk exactly when you want it, without you ever having to search the shelves. The system quietly managed memory behind the scenes, moving data as needed, and making sure everything ran smoothly. 10X also offered advanced process management, keeping each user's programs separate and protected. It was the digital version of a friendly game of tag, reflecting the playful spirit of the early computing community. Perhaps most notably, ARPANET included features that allowed programs to move between computers on the network, supporting the spirit of distributed research. The people who built these systems were focused on creating tools for learning and discovery. This atmosphere of trust touched every part of the early ARPANET, yet this openness was not naive, but necessary. The ARPANET was an experiment, connecting researchers who needed to share not just data, but entire computing environments. In this world of digital trust, Creeper was not an intruder, but a natural participant. The message Creeper left behind, "I am the Creeper. Catch me if you can," wasn't a threat, but an invitation to play. And in the quiet computer rooms where that message appeared, glowing softly on terminal screens, the future of computing was being written, one character at a time. Word of Creeper's peaceful wanderings eventually reached the ears of another programmer, a man whose name would become legendary in the annals of computing history for reasons that extended far beyond his response to a wandering program. Ray Tomlinson was already a figure of considerable renown in the small, tight-knit community of ARPANET researchers. Just a year earlier, in 1971, he had accomplished something that would fundamentally change human communication. He had invented email, not just any email, but networked email that could travel between different computers, carrying messages across the vast distances that separated ARPANET nodes. Tomlinson's innovation was deceptively simple, but profoundly important. He was a programmer's programmer, someone who delighted in solving interesting technical challenges for their own sake. When he heard about Creeper's gentle journey through the ARPANET, he saw not a problem to be eliminated, but a fascinating puzzle to be solved. He called his creation Reaper, a name that suggested both harvest and conclusion, the natural end to Creeper's digital life cycle. Its mission was beautifully simple: find Creeper wherever it might be hiding and quietly remove it from the system. But the elegance of Reaper lay not just in its purpose, but in its method. Reaper would arrive on a new system and immediately begin its search, examining running processes, checking file directories, looking for any sign that Creeper had passed this way. When it found evidence of Creeper's presence, it would carefully remove every trace, cleaning up after the wandering program with the thoroughness of a digital janitor. He had taken an existing program called SNDMSG, which allowed users to leave messages for each other on the same computer, and modified it to send messages across the network. The encounter was as quiet and civilized as everything else in the early ARPANET. It was a dance of digital predator and prey, but one conducted with the courtesy and restraint that characterized the early computing community. Reaper simply identified the processes and files that belonged to Creeper and deleted them, removing the wandering program from the system as gently as it had arrived. For the first time, a program had been created specifically to counter another program's behavior. The first antivirus program was being born, not from fear or necessity, but from the simple desire to solve an interesting technical challenge. It established a pattern that would echo through the decades. For every new form of digital exploration, there would be a corresponding form of digital protection. But it was also the beginning of something much larger, a recognition that in a connected world, every capability must be balanced by a corresponding responsibility. He had shown that the same networks that could carry exploration could also carry protection, that the openness that made Creeper possible could also make its control possible. The concept of digital immune systems, of software designed to protect rather than to compute, had been born. It carried within its code a perfect understanding of Creeper's structure and behavior, allowing it to recognize its quarry, even if it tried to hide. But where Creeper left playful messages, Reaper worked in silence, methodically searching each system for traces of its predecessor. If Creeper could move through the network, he reasoned, then surely another program could follow in its footsteps. The question was not whether such a program could be created, but how it should behave once it found its quarry. To distinguish between local and remote addresses, he chose a symbol that was available on every keyboard but rarely used in computing, the @ sign. Neither program was malicious. Neither caused any real harm. They were simply two sides of the same coin: exploration and protection, curiosity and caution, dancing together in the early days of our networked world. It was a hunter capable of following Creeper's trail across the network, predicting where it might go next based on its previous behavior. This required a sophisticated understanding of both the ARPANET's topology and Creeper's decision-making process. The first networked email message sent by Tomlinson from one computer to another in the same room was unremarkable in content but revolutionary in concept. With only about 30 10x machines connected to ARPANET, Reaper could systematically visit each one, checking for Creeper's presence and removing it if found. The program maintained its own internal map of the network, keeping track of which machines it had visited and which still needed to be checked. It proved that people could communicate electronically across any distance, laying the foundation for the global communication networks that would eventually connect billions of people. But Tomlinson was not content to rest on his laurels. Unlike some who might have seen Creeper as a nuisance to be stopped, Tomlinson approached it with the same spirit of intellectual curiosity that had driven its creation. In the quiet of his own laboratory at BBN Technologies, surrounded by the same gentle hum of computing machinery that had inspired Bob Thomas, Tomlinson began to craft a response. Reaper was Creeper's gentle opposite, a program designed not to explore but to seek, not to announce but to act. Like Creeper, Reaper could move from machine to machine using the same RSexic facility that 10x provided. The process was almost ritualistic in its precision. But Reaper was more than just a cleanup program. The network in 1972 was still small enough that such tracking was feasible. When Reaper found Creeper, there was no dramatic confrontation, no digital battle. Then, like Creeper before it, Reaper would move on to the next machine, continuing its patient hunt through the peaceful corridors of cyberspace. The creation of Reaper marked a turning point in the history of computing, though few recognized it at the time. Tomlinson's achievement was remarkable not just for its technical innovation, but for its philosophical implications. In this quiet dance between pursuer and pursued, something remarkable was happening. The relationship between Creeper and Reaper was almost symbiotic. Creeper had shown what was possible in this connected world, and Reaper had shown how that possibility could be controlled and managed. As Reaper quietly eliminated the last traces of Creeper from the ARPANET, it marked the end of the first chapter in computer security history. The story of Creeper and Reaper might have ended there, a curious footnote in the early history of computing, remembered only by the handful of researchers who witnessed their gentle dance through the ARPANET. But like ripples spreading across a still pond, their influence would be felt for decades to come, inspiring new forms of digital life and new approaches to digital protection. The network was expanding rapidly, connecting universities and research institutions across the United States, and eventually around the world. This realization would inspire both wonder and concern in the computing community, leading to new research into the nature of self-replicating programs and their potential applications. With each new connection, the potential for both collaboration and mischief grew exponentially. In the quiet years that followed, as ARPANET grew and evolved, adding new nodes and new capabilities, the lessons learned from that first digital encounter would prove invaluable. Creeper had demonstrated something that few had imagined possible, that programs could have a form of digital life. On the surface, Animal appeared to be nothing more than an innocent game, a simple program that would try to guess what animal the user was thinking of by asking a series of yes or no questions. It was the kind of program that might be found in any computer science classroom, a harmless diversion that demonstrated basic programming concepts. It would then copy updated versions of both Animal and Pervade into those directories, ensuring that the program would be available to other users who might access those same directories. Some researchers, fascinated by the concept of programs that could reproduce and evolve, unlike Creeper, which moved from machine to machine across network connections, Pervade spread through a different mechanism. It copied itself into every directory that the current user could access on the local system. They drew inspiration from biology, studying how living organisms reproduce, adapt, and survive in changing environments. Animal and Pervade represented the first true Trojan horse program, a piece of software that concealed its true purpose behind an innocent exterior. Its only crime, if it could be called that, was its tendency to multiply and spread without explicit permission. What had started as isolated islands of computation were becoming an archipelago of connected systems, linked not just by formal networks like ARPANET, but by the informal networks of human collaboration and data sharing. Computational resources could be pooled and shared across institutional boundaries. In the trusting environment of 1970s academic computing, this was seen more as a curiosity than a threat. The innocent days of Creeper and Reaper, when self-replicating programs were curiosities rather than threats, were drawing to a close. The stage was being set for a new era, one in which the balance between openness and security would become a central concern of the digital age. They showed that self-replicating programs could spread through social engineering as much as through technical means, relying on users' willingness to share interesting programs with their colleagues. A program created at one institution could quickly spread to dozens of others. A mistake or malicious act at one site could have consequences far beyond its original location. The same mechanisms that enabled collaboration also enabled the spread of unwanted or harmful programs. Could computer programs exhibit similar behaviors? Could they evolve and improve themselves over time? Unlike Creeper, which announced its presence with a playful message, Pervade operated in complete silence. Users might run Animal dozens of times without ever realizing that it was copying itself throughout their system. The program was careful to avoid overwriting existing files or crossing permission boundaries, making its presence almost undetectable. They traveled from university to university, from research lab to research lab, carried by the normal flow of data and programs that characterized the. How could they preserve the openness and trust that made collaboration possible while protecting against the potential for abuse? How could they distinguish between beneficial programs like Animal and potentially harmful ones? Pervade demonstrated that such programs could spread, not It showed that they could operate covertly, hiding their reproductive behavior behind the facade of legitimate functionality. These questions led to the development of new fields of study, including artificial life and evolutionary computation. Researchers began creating programs that could modify themselves, that could even reproduce with variations that might prove advantageous in their digital environment. But it was in 1975 that the next significant milestone in the evolution of self-replicating programs occurred, with the creation of a program that would push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in the computing community. The program was called Animal, and it was created by John Walker for the UNIVAC 1108 computer system. The technique was ingenious in its simplicity. When Animal ran, Pervade would quietly examine the user's file permissions, identifying every directory where the user had write access. Because users regularly shared magnetic tapes and disk packs between different UNIVAC installations, Animal and Pervade spread far beyond their original host system. What made Animal and Pervades particularly significant was their stealth. This represented a new level of sophistication in self-replicating programs. The implications were profound, though few recognized them at the time. It caused no damage, stole no data, and interfered with no other programs. The spread of Animal and Pervade also highlighted the growing interconnectedness of the computing world. This interconnectedness brought tremendous benefits. Researchers could share programs and data more easily than ever before. But it also brought new vulnerabilities. The computing community began to grapple with these new realities. These questions would become increasingly urgent as the computing world continued to expand and evolve. As the 1970s progressed and gave way to the 1980s, the computing landscape began to change in ways that would fundamentally alter the context in which programs like Preeper and Animal operated. The intimate, trusting world of early ARPANET was evolving into something larger, more complex, and inevitably more dangerous. What had started as a small network connecting a few dozen research institutions was expanding rapidly, adding new nodes and new users at an exponential rate. By the late 1970s, ARPANET connected hundreds of computers, and plans were already underway for even more ambitious networks that would eventually become the modern internet. The transformation began with the simple fact of growth. This growth brought tremendous benefits. More researchers could collaborate across greater distances. Computational resources could be shared more efficiently. The pace of scientific discovery accelerated as barriers to communication and collaboration continued to fall. But growth also brought new challenges and new vulnerabilities. Personal computers, virtually unknown in the early 1970s, were becoming increasingly common and powerful. These machines brought computing power directly to individuals, freeing them from the constraints and oversight of institutional computer centers. The most significant change was in the nature of the user community. Suddenly, anyone with a few $1,000s could own a computer capable of running sophisticated programs and connecting to networks. Unlike Creeper and Animal, which had been created by researchers as experiments or demonstrations, these new programs were designed with harmful intent from the beginning. This democratization brought tremendous benefits, but it also meant that computing power was now in the hands of people who might not share the ethical constraints of the academic research community. Brain was created by two brothers who claimed they were trying to protect their software from piracy. Like Creeper, they could replicate and spread from system to system. Antivirus software, inspired by Tomlinson's pioneering Reaper program, began to appear commercially. And Reaper, how to distinguish between beneficial and harmful programs, how to preserve the openness that made computing useful while protecting against abuse. Companies like McAfee, Norton, and Symantec built entire business models around protecting computers from malicious software. Modern antivirus software uses sophisticated pattern matching algorithms, behavioral analysis, and machine learning techniques to identify and neutralize threats. Every new capability creates new opportunities for both beneficial and harmful use. Every innovation in attack techniques drives corresponding innovations in defense. But at its core, it still performs the same basic function as Reaper. It hunts down and removes unwanted programs from computer systems. It reminds us that technology is not inherently good or evil, but rather a tool that reflects the intentions and values of those who use it. Like animal, they could hide their true purpose behind innocent-seeming functionality. But, unlike the early experimental programs, they were created with malicious intent and caused real harm to their victims. But it spread far beyond their intended targets, infecting computers around the world and causing significant disruption. This made programs more difficult to understand and modify, but it also made it easier to hide malicious functionality. A program that appeared to perform one function might secretly be doing something entirely different. The early ARPANET had been populated almost exclusively by researchers and academics, people who shared a common commitment to advancing human knowledge and who operated within well-established norms of scholarly conduct. In the early days of ARPANET, most programs were written by researchers for their own use or for sharing with close colleagues. The source code was typically available, and programs were often modified and improved by their users. This open approach fostered innovation and collaboration, but also made it easy to understand and modify programs like Creeper and Animal, unlike its predecessors, which had operated in the controlled environment of research networks. Elk Cloner spread through the consumer computing ecosystem, infecting Apple II computers through floppy disks. It was designed to be annoying rather than destructive, displaying a poem on infected computers. But it demonstrated that malicious programs could spread far beyond their original creators. Others were motivated by more practical concerns, the desire to gain unauthorized access to systems, to steal valuable information, or simply to demonstrate their technical prowess by circumventing security measures. Government agencies, commercial organizations, and eventually ordinary citizens gained access to networked computing resources. Many of these new users brought different values and different motivations to their use of computing technology. They knew each other, if not personally, then by reputation, and they shared a culture of mutual respect and cooperation. But as the network grew, it began to attract users from outside this tight-knit community. Some were driven by curiosity, much like the early researchers, but their curiosity was not always tempered by the same sense of responsibility and restraint. The computing systems themselves were also evolving in ways that created new opportunities for both legitimate use and abuse. The Apple II, introduced in 1977, and the IBM PC, launched in 1981, democratized computing in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. The software ecosystem was also becoming more complex and diverse. But as computing became more commercial, software began to be distributed in binary form, without source code. It was in this changing environment that the first truly malicious, self-replicating programs began to appear. The Elk cloner virus, created by Rich Skrenta in 1982, was one of the first to gain widespread attention. More concerning was the brain virus, created in Pakistan in 1986, which was the first virus to infect IBM PC-compatible computers. These new viruses shared some characteristics with their benevolent predecessors. The response from the computing community was swift and decisive, but the fundamental challenge remained the same as it had been in the days of Creeper. The solutions that emerged were necessarily more complex than Tomlinson's elegant Reaper. The evolution from Creeper to modern malware, and from Reaper to modern antivirus software, illustrates one of the fundamental dynamics of the digital age. This dynamic, first established in the gentle dance between Creeper and Reaper on the early ARPANET, continues to shape the computing world today. As we drift toward the present day in our gentle journey through the history of computer security, we can see how the innocent experiments of Bob Thomas and Ray Tomlinson have evolved into the complex digital ecosystem that surrounds us today. The lessons learned from Creeper and Reaper continue to resonate through every aspect of our connected world. In our modern age, where billions of devices are connected through networks that span the globe, the fundamental challenge remains the same as it was in 1971. How to balance openness with security, innovation with protection, trust with caution. The scale has changed dramatically, but the underlying principles established by those early pioneers remain as relevant as ever. This small computer is more powerful than the room-sized PDP-10s that hosted Creeper and Reaper. The app stores that curate and distribute software are descendants of the trust-based sharing systems of early ARPANET. The idea that software can have a form of digital life, first demonstrated by Creeper's gentle wandering, has led to breakthrough discoveries in artificial intelligence and machine learning. The automatic updates that keep your software current are evolved versions of Reaper's systematic hunt for outdated or harmful code. The protocols that govern how data moves through the network, the security measures that protect our communications, the very architecture of the World Wide Web virtual memory systems, process isolation, access controls, and automatic updates all serve to create environments where beneficial programs can thrive while harmful ones are contained or eliminated. When you store a photo in the cloud, stream a movie, or collaborate on a document with colleagues around the world, you are participating in a vast, distributed computing system that makes the early ARPANET look tiny by comparison. How do you ensure that programs running in the cloud are legitimate and safe? How do you prevent malicious code from spreading through shared infrastructure? How do you maintain the openness and flexibility that makes cloud computing useful while protecting against abuse? The Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which governs how web pages are transmitted and displayed, includes authentication and encryption capabilities that would have been unimaginable in the trusting world of early ARPANET. Machine learning algorithms analyze the behavior of programs to identify potential threats. Sandboxing technologies isolate suspicious code in controlled environments where it can be studied safely. Blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies provide new ways to verify the authenticity and integrity of software. But it also teaches us that this ecosystem is resilient, capable of adapting and evolving to meet new challenges. And caution we are continuing the work that began with Bob Thomas and Ray Tomlinson. We are participating in the eternal dance of exploration and protection that keeps our connected world both wondrous and safe. The concepts they pioneered have inspired new forms of digital art and competition. Behind every line of defensive code, every security protocol, every threat detection algorithm, there are people working to make our connected world a better, safer place. They are the modern descendants of Ray Tomlinson, patient and vigilant, ensuring that we can rest peacefully in our connected world. The programming game called Core War, where competing programs battle for control of a computer's memory, draws direct inspiration from that first encounter between Wanderer and Hunter. They develop new antivirus signatures to protect against emerging threats. They design secure protocols and implement robust authentication systems. They educate users about safe computing practices and respond to security incidents when they occur. Yet it connects seamlessly to a global network that carries not just data and programs, but the very fabric of modern human communication and commerce. But they are the unsung heroes of the digital age. The people who make it possible for billions of people to use computers and networks safely and productively every day. They are the gentle guardians of our digital dreams, standing watch while we sleep, ensuring that our connected world remains a place of wonder rather than fear. Consider the smartphone in your pocket, a device that would have seemed like magic to the researchers working on ARPANET in the 1970s. Every app you download, every update you install, every message you send exists within a digital ecosystem that traces its roots back to that first gentle encounter between a wandering program and its patient pursuer. The antivirus software that protects our computers, the firewalls that guard our networks, the intrusion detection systems that monitor our digital infrastructure. All of them are descendants of Reaper's patient pursuit. But the influence of Creeper and Reaper extends far beyond traditional computer security, genetic algorithms, and evolutionary computation. Fields that use principles of biological evolution to solve complex problems owe their existence to the recognition that programs can reproduce, mutate, and evolve. Even the modern internet itself bears the imprint of those early experiments. The domain name system, which translates human-readable web addresses into the numerical addresses that computers understand. Modern operating systems, from Windows to Mac OS to Linux, all include sophisticated security features that trace their lineage back to the lessons learned from Creeper and its successors. The cloud computing services that power much of our modern digital infrastructure represent the ultimate evolution of the distributed computing vision that inspired ARPANET. Yet these systems face the same fundamental challenges that confronted the creators of Creeper and Reaper. The solutions that have emerged are sophisticated and multifaceted, but at their core, all of these modern security measures are performing the same basic function as Reaper. They are hunting down and neutralizing threats to the digital ecosystem. The story of Creeper and Reaper also reminds us of the importance of the human element in computer security. These digital guardians work in security operations centers around the world, monitoring network traffic for signs of malicious activity. Their work is often invisible to the rest of us, noticed only when something goes wrong. The story of the first computer virus teaches us that in a networked world, we are all connected, all part of a larger digital ecosystem that requires care and protection. Every time we update our software, every time we practice good digital hygiene, every time we approach new technology with both curiosity. As our gentle journey through the history of the first computer virus draws toward its peaceful conclusion, we find ourselves contemplating deeper questions about the nature of our relationship with technology and with each other in this connected world we have created. The story of Creeper and Reaper is, at its heart, a story about balance. It illustrates the delicate equilibrium that must be maintained between innovation and security, between openness and protection, between trust and vigilance. The small, tight-knit community of researchers shared common values and operated within well-established norms of behavior. We can no longer rely solely on social mechanisms to ensure good behavior. The informal norms that work well in small groups must be supplemented by laws, institutions, and enforcement mechanisms that can operate at scale. We need technical safeguards, legal frameworks, and institutional structures to protect against abuse while preserving the benefits of our connected world. Thomas's creation of Creeper demonstrated the power of curiosity and exploration. Tomlinson's response with Reaper showed that protection and innovation could coexist and even reinforce each other. Trust was possible because everyone knew everyone else, at least by reputation, and because the consequences of betraying that trust were severe within the academic community. It requires us to balance competing interests and values while never losing sight of our shared humanity. The same technologies that enable unprecedented levels of communication and collaboration also create new opportunities for surveillance, manipulation, and control. We can choose to retreat into isolated, heavily protected enclaves, sacrificing the benefits of connection for the security of isolation. Neither program was designed to solve the problem of computer security once and for all. Together, they established a pattern of innovation and response that has driven the evolution of computing for more than 50 years. Instead, they represented the first steps in an ongoing process of exploration and adaptation that continues to this day. It demonstrates that our connected world, for all its vulnerabilities, is fundamentally resilient and adaptable. It is a dance that will never end because the technology continues to evolve and new challenges continue to emerge. Or we can choose to work together to build systems that are both open and secure, both innovative and protective. The same networks that connect us to information and each other can also be used to spread misinformation and sow discord. The goal is not to build the most secure system or the most innovative application, but to create tools that help people live better, more connected, more fulfilling lives. This balance is not a static thing, achieved once and then maintained forever, but rather a dynamic process that requires constant attention and adjustment. In the early days of ARPANET, this balance was maintained through social mechanisms rather than technical ones. We must be willing to explore new possibilities while also being mindful of the consequences of our actions. We must be open to innovation while also being vigilant about protection. But as the computing world has grown and diversified, maintaining this balance has become increasingly challenging. They created systems that could evolve and grow, that could accommodate new uses and new users while maintaining their essential character. But only if we work together with wisdom, patience, and a shared commitment to the common good. It shows us that the challenges we face today are not fundamentally different from those faced by the pioneers of computing 50 years ago. They require the same combination of technical skill, ethical reflection, and collaborative spirit that has always driven human progress. This evolution reflects a broader pattern in human society. As communities grow larger and more diverse, they must develop more formal mechanisms for maintaining order and resolving conflicts. It emphasizes practical solutions over theoretical perfection, collaboration over competition, and evolution over revolution. It recognizes that complex systems cannot be designed in advance, but must be allowed to emerge through the interaction of many participants over time. The challenge is to implement these formal mechanisms without destroying the very qualities that make our connected world valuable. We want security, but not at the cost of innovation. We want protection, but not at the cost of openness. We want order, but not at the cost of creativity and exploration. The story of Creeper and Reaper suggests that this balance is achievable, but only through careful thought and deliberate action. This lesson is particularly relevant today as we grapple with new challenges in cybersecurity, privacy, and digital rights. How we respond to these challenges will determine the kind of digital future we create for ourselves and our children. The path forward requires wisdom, patience, and a commitment to the common good. It requires us to learn from the past while adapting to new realities. The researchers who created ARPANET understood this intuitively. They built a network that was designed to be resilient, not through rigid control, but through flexibility and adaptation. This approach, sometimes called rough consensus and running code, became a defining characteristic of Internet culture. The story of Creeper and Reaper embodies this philosophy perfectly. Creeper showed what was possible in a connected world. Reaper showed how those possibilities could be managed and controlled. This pattern continues today in the ongoing arms race between malware creators and security researchers, between those who would exploit our connected systems and those who work to protect them. But it is also a dance that gives us hope. It shows us that human ingenuity and cooperation can overcome even the most sophisticated threats. The key is to approach these challenges with the same spirit of curiosity and responsibility that motivated Thomas and Tomlinson. Most importantly, we must remember that technology is not an end in itself, but a means to human flourishing. The story of the first computer virus reminds us that this goal is achievable. As we settle into the peaceful conclusion of our story, let us take comfort in the knowledge that the digital world, for all its complexity and occasional dangers, remains fundamentally a human creation, shaped by human values and guided by human wisdom. The story of Creeper and Reaper is ultimately a story about us, our curiosity, our creativity, our capacity for both innovation and responsibility. It reminds us that behind every line of code, every security protocol, every digital defense, there are people working to make our connected world a better, safer place. In the quiet moments before sleep, as our devices perform their nightly rituals of updates and scans, we can appreciate the invisible army of digital guardians that watch over our electronic dreams. They are the descendants of Reaper, patient and vigilant, ensuring that we can rest peacefully in our connected world. These modern guardians work in many forms. Some are human, the security researchers who analyze new threats, the system administrators who maintain our networks, the programmers who write defensive code. Others are digital, the antivirus programs that scan our files, the firewalls that filter our network traffic. the intrusion detection systems that monitor for suspicious activity. But all of them, human and digital alike, are part of the same ecosystem of protection that began with Ray Tomlinson's patient pursuit of Bob Thomas's wandering program. They represent the evolution of that first, simple idea that for every new capability in our connected world, there must be a corresponding responsibility to use it wisely and protect it carefully. The dance between exploration and protection, between innovation and security, between creeper and reaper, continues today on a scale that would have been unimaginable to those early pioneers. Every day, millions of new programs are created and distributed. Every day, security systems analyze billions of events looking for signs of malicious activity. Every day, the balance between openness and protection is tested and adjusted in countless small ways. This ongoing process is not a sign of failure, but of success. It shows that our digital ecosystem is alive and evolving, capable of adapting to new challenges and opportunities. It demonstrates that the principles established by those early experiments on ARPANET remain valid and valuable, even as the technology has grown exponentially in power and complexity. The first computer virus taught us that in a networked world, we are all connected, all part of a larger digital ecosystem that requires care and protection. But it also taught us that this ecosystem is resilient, capable of adapting and evolving to meet new challenges. As you drift off to sleep tonight, surrounded by the gentle hum of your connected devices, remember that you are part of this story. Every time you update your software, every time you practice good digital hygiene, every time you approach new technology with both curiosity and caution, you are continuing the work that began with Bob Thomas and Ray Tomlinson. You are participating in the eternal dance of curiosity and caution that keeps our connected world both wondrous and safe. You are helping to maintain the delicate balance between innovation and security that makes our digital civilization possible. The devices around you, from your smartphone to your smart home systems, from your laptop to your streaming devices, all carry within them the DNA of that first encounter between creeper and reaper. They embody the same principles of exploration and protection, the same balance of openness and security that characterized that gentle dance through the early ARPANET. When your phone automatically updates its security definitions, it is performing a modern version of Reaper's patient hunt. When your computer scans downloaded files for viruses, it is continuing the work that Tomlinson began more than 50 years ago. When your router filters network traffic to block malicious connections, it is implementing the same basic principle of protection that guided the creation of the first antivirus program. But these systems do more than just protect us from harm. They also enable the incredible benefits of our connected world. They make it possible for us to communicate instantly with people around the globe, to access vast libraries of information, to collaborate on projects that span continents and time zones. They allow us to work from home, to learn from the world's best teachers, to create and share art and music and literature with audiences we could never reach in person. They enable scientific discoveries that would be impossible without global collaboration, medical treatments that depend on real-time data sharing, and social movements that organize across traditional boundaries. All of this is possible because of the foundation laid by those early pioneers who understood that connection and protection must go hand in hand. They created systems that were open enough to enable innovation and collaboration, but secure enough to prevent abuse and maintain trust. The challenge for our generation is to continue this work, to maintain and extend this balance. As our technology becomes even more powerful and pervasive, we must ensure that the benefits of our connected world are available to everyone, while also protecting against the risks that come with increased connectivity. This is not just a technical challenge, but a social and ethical one. It requires us to think carefully about the kind of world we want to create, about the values we want to embed in our technology, about the responsibilities we have to each other and to future generations. The story of the first computer virus gives us hope that we can meet these challenges successfully. It shows us that human ingenuity and cooperation can overcome even the most sophisticated threats. It demonstrates that our connected world, for all its vulnerabilities, is fundamentally resilient and adaptable. Most importantly, it reminds us that we are not passive consumers of technology, but active participants in its creation and evolution. Every choice we make, every program we write, every system we design, helps to shape the digital future we will all inhabit. Sweet dreams, digital dreamers. May your rest be peaceful, and may you wake tomorrow ready to continue the eternal dance of curiosity and caution that keeps our connected world both wondrous and safe. The first computer virus was just the beginning. The story continues with each of us, every day, in every choice we make about how to explore and protect our digital frontier. As our journey through the history of the first computer virus comes to its peaceful end, we find ourselves back where we began, in the quiet corners of our homes, surrounded by the gentle hum of our connected devices, each one a descendant of those early pioneers who dared to imagine a world where computers could talk to each other across vast distances. The story we have shared tonight is more than just a tale of technical innovation. It is a story about human nature, about our endless capacity for curiosity and creativity, about our ability to learn from our mistakes and adapt to new challenges. It is a story about the delicate balance between exploration and protection that defines our relationship with technology. Bob Thomas, sitting at his terminal in 1971, could never have imagined that his simple experiment would lead to the complex ecosystem of digital security that protects billions of devices today. Ray Tomlinson, crafting his elegant response to creepers wandering, could not have foreseen the vast industry of cybersecurity professionals who carry on his work. Yet, in their innocent curiosity and thoughtful response, they established principles that remain as relevant today as they were 50 years ago. They showed us that every new capability brings new responsibilities, that every innovation must be balanced by corresponding protections, that the same networks that enable collaboration can also enable abuse. The gentle dance between creeper and reaper continues today in countless forms. It plays out in the security updates that download automatically to our devices, in the firewalls that protect our home networks, in the antivirus software that scans our files. It manifests in the work of security researchers who analyze new threats, in the programmers who write defensive code, in the system administrators who maintain the infrastructure of our connected world. But perhaps most importantly, it continues in the choices that each of us makes every day. When we choose to update our software promptly, we are participating in the collective defense of our digital ecosystem. When we practice good password hygiene, we are contributing to the security of the networks we share with others. When we approach new technologies with both enthusiasm and caution, We are honoring the legacy of those early pioneers who showed us how to balance innovation with responsibility. The devices that surround us as we sleep are not just tools, but partners in this ongoing dance. They work quietly through the night, updating their defenses, sharing threat intelligence, adapting to new challenges. They are the gentle guardians of our digital dreams, ensuring that we can wake each morning to a world that is both connected and secure. In the soft glow of status lights and the quiet whisper of cooling fans, we can hear the echo of that first message that appeared on ARPANET terminals more than 50 years ago. I'm the creeper, catch me if you can. It was an invitation to play, a challenge to explore, a reminder that in our connected world, every action has consequences that ripple outward in ways we might never fully understand. The response to that challenge, embodied in Reaper's patient pursuit, continues today in every security measure, every protective protocol, every defensive system that keeps our digital world safe. It reminds us that protection and innovation are not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of technological progress. As you drift off to sleep tonight, take comfort in knowing that you are part of this grand story, this ongoing experiment in human cooperation and technological progress. Your devices will continue their quiet work while you rest, updating and protecting, scanning and securing, participating in the vast, distributed effort to maintain the balance between openness and security that makes our connected world possible. The first computer virus taught us that in a networked world, we are all connected, all part of a larger digital ecosystem that requires care and protection. But it also taught us that this ecosystem is resilient, capable of growth and adaptation, able to meet new challenges while preserving the benefits that make it valuable. The story continues tomorrow and the day after that, and for as long as humans and computers work together to explore the possibilities of our connected world. It is a story without end, a dance without conclusion, a balance that must be maintained through the ongoing efforts of countless individuals working together toward a common goal. Sweet dreams, digital pioneers. May your rest be peaceful, and may you wake tomorrow ready to continue the gentle dance of curiosity and caution that began with a simple program named Creeper and continues with each of us every day in every choice we make about how to explore and protect our shared digital future. The first computer virus was not an ending, but a beginning. The story it started continues with you.